You're listening to a special extra episode of Through the Square Window with me, Samira Ahmed.
And me, Graham Kibble-White.
In February 2019, I met up with Barry Cryer to talk to him about Thames Television's The Kenny Everett video show, as featured on the most recent episode of our podcast. The conversation, recorded on my iPhone at Barry's home, was intended to appear in a future edition of the magazine, TV Years, a magazine that was edited by Graham Kibble-White.
Yes, this is true, but sadly amongst all the uncertainty of 2020, TV Years stopped production. And so we're presenting this interview for the very first time.
And now, Thames Television brings you the programme that's bigger than this, more daring than this, hotter than this, more exciting than this. Thames Television brings you the test card.
Can I start by asking how you came to be involved in working with Kenny on the TV show?
He was doing Nice Time with Jermaine Greer and Jonathan Rouse.
Most of you who saw the last series of Nice Time will have seen the debut of the Nice Time Musical Saws Orchestra. Well, we've had millions of letters to bring them back, so here they are.
I met him at a do or something. We sort of got to know each other. And then Angela Bond, amazing woman, producer, had me and Kenny to lunch to talk about a proposed radio comedy series, which never happened. But Kenny and I really palled up around then. Then Philip Jones at Thames Television, who was head of Light End and all that, told me that he said to his son, who was only about 18 then, who isn't on television do you think should be on television? And his son said Kenny Everett. Kenny had been at London Weekend. And he didn't enjoy that period, he told me. He thought radio was his passion and his love, and he thought, no, I've had it with television. So here we go again. There was a lunch, me and Kenny, Philip Jones and everything. And I'd done a series called Joker's Wild with a producer, with Mike McIntyre's
dad,
Ray Cameron. And the producer, David Mallet, became the producer of Kenny Everett. So David Mallet had been brought on board, and we were chatting, and the next thing was, David Mallet and I said, oh, Ray should be on board permanently. And that's how it all happened. Other writers joined us later on, but Ray and I were the original writers for Kenny Everett. And I will say he was the only non-comedian I ever wrote for. He was Kenny Everett. He was a one-off, and it was just a joy, that period, working with him. The Thames era, no audience, recording all day long. The only show I ever worked on when nobody said quiet. Nobody did a countdown. They just let the cameras roll. And you give Everett an idea, and he was off and running with it. And the crews loved him. They all wanted to work with Kenny Everett.
Tune in next week to find out whether Dora Jar and her cohort Betty Doesn't will escape from the piranha-filled envelope in which they've been sealed by the evil Count von 1 to 10 and his fiendish assistants Ken Woodmixer and Ivor Hernia. As ever, we leave you with a cliffhanger. Shut up!
How bold was it, that whole, letting the crew laughter be a big part of the show?
We never asked them to laugh. No. That would be insulting. But if you heard laughing, it was the crew. They loved him. Oh, and the great moment. Now, this is the difference between working ITV, BBC. Kenny was playing a character called Brother Lee Love.
Oh, yeah.
With his big polystyrene hands on or whatever, and we had gospel singers behind him. Yeah. And he's singing away, coming at the camera, and being Everett, suddenly took his hands off, grabbed hold of the camera, and the cameraman let him, they loved him, pulled the camera around, and you saw a dusty floor and cardboard coffee cups and somebody running to get out of the shot.
Yeah.
And Everett said, "Oh, the glamour of it all." And that was in the show. So we go to the BBC, and Kenny's doing something, a pre-record, and Bill Wilson, the producer's up in the gallery, and I said to Ev, "Do the pull the camera."
Yeah.
So he did it again at the BBC, and the crew at the BBC laughed and loved it. Bill came down from the gallery and said, "That was very funny. Can we do it again? There was a bit of a shadow on Kenny's face." I said, "We do tatty, Bill." That was the difference. It had to be smooth.
Yeah.
Tell you what, crew, while they're away, let's watch Hot Gossip. And
And of course, in the Thames era, we had Hot Gossip writhing about.
Yeah.
And they loved him, the women in the show. They loved Ev. And Mary Whitehouse called it sheer pornography. Not our jokes,
Yeah.
the dancers writhing about. And I met her at a do once. Somebody said, "You met Mary Whitehouse, Baz?" I said, "No." She came over very pleasantly. "Hello, hello." And I got hold of her hand far too firmly. And I said, "I work on the Kenny Everett show. You made us." And she glazed over and moved away to talk to somebody else. "Oh, if you were condemned by Whitehouse, everybody wanted
The
that."
following program contains naughty bits.
It's funny watching back the tapes. It definitely gets more and more. The Hot Gossip gets more and more risque as it runs.
Oh, yes.
Deliberately.
It's way over the top in
It
a
is.
finish.
I'm glad you said
And of
that.
course, it's incorrect as well. Oh, and Kenny played Mary Whitehouse.
Yes. Oh, with the bosoms.
The boobs would then explode.
Up to now, the show's been almost acceptable, apart from one of two of the groups. And the dancers. There's dancers. When will they stop? And Lenny himself, that skin-tight shirt, hugging his biceps, turning the head of a poor innocent girl. It's got to stop! Pinky! Perky! Where are you?
Going back to when the Thames show got commissioned, was there a goal, or was it as simple as Kenny Everett should be on the TV and you write the pilot and you write the show you want?
Yeah, the concept of him was disc jockey on television.
Hi, folks. Welcome to the Kenny Everett video show. It's gonna be great. We've got the videotapes. We've got the machine to show them on. It's gonna be fab. And video, as you know, is Latin for I see. And that's what this show's all about. We're gonna bring you tons of stuff that you can see. Radio will be a thing of the past. And now, stand by to see our first viewing item. Eyeballs at the ready. Start viewing now.
So introduced the band and the singers and one or two jokes in between. But it began to change. The bits in between got longer. Ray and I were writing, we thought this man's just so bloody funny. And we started, it became a comedy show with guests. And we were the sort of modest version of Morecambe and Wise, because they had famous actors, actresses and people. And everybody wanted to be on Ev's show. You know, Freddie Mercury,
Do your stuff, Fred.
Cliff Richard,
Got myself a crying off.
Rod Stewart,
Hello, Rod. Hi, Tony.
all the biggies, Elton.
It's a little bit funny.
They all said yes if they were asked to be on. And they knew that he would take the piss out of them when they're being interviewed. Cliff loved it, the jokes we did about him. And have you seen the black and white clip?
Have we got a surprise for you? Oh, Kenny, don't tell me you've not dug up one of those old clips, have you, mate?
This is one of my favourites. I think it was Ray's idea.
Why don't you like them? I can't bear it. I mean, I looked so terrible in those days.
Cliff was looking good then.
I look so great now. I mean, I've had the barnet done, the teeth, I look taller.
Hardly any different from when he was younger.
New socks. I mean, you know, I'd rather see myself now than then, mate.
Oh, you're out of luck, kid. Here comes that old clip.
So we recorded him with colour cameras, obviously. Made the clip grainy. So he's singing one of his old hits, Black and White.
Oh, let me tell you, baby, it's called rock and roll.
And Everett walks in.
You're right, you know, you do look better now.
We're always doing things like that.
The visual gags intrigue me because they seem to be playing at the edge of what television can do with
Yes.
early green screen and
We were trying to
digital
push it.
effects. Tell me about that.
Well, Ray, I have to say, Ray was the man who kept saying to me, "Oh, I saw something last night, or I've heard about something." we could do that with Ev. And we'd talk to David Mallet, who was up for anything, and David would go into it and come up with how we could do it technically, you know, and it was a joy.
Because there were once,
what you could do with him.
When Kenny Everett's talking to himself in the screen.
Yes.
And interacting with, obviously, what's been pre-shot.
Yes.
Hello and a Happy New Year, or in harmony...
Hello, 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 and a Happy New Year.
I mean, was that easy to write once you knew you could do it, or actually is it quite hard?
Well, I mean, the onus was on, Everett recording all his faces. The onus was on David Mallet putting it together. It was brilliant. But then Ev doing it, I mean, it was just amazing. He seemed to do it in one take.
I was going to ask, was he a bit of a one-take wonder?
Yes.
Yeah.
And we used to con him to start with, and then he realised what we were doing. We said, as if the camera wasn't on, as if he was rehearsing something. But we'd have the camera on. And he'd do it brilliantly the first time. But we got it, we recorded it. And then he found out we were doing that. He was delighted. Oh, I only do one take, that's good.
Looking back, I was struck by he seems such an original. Was this just something natural about him and the ability, because he did it with radio when, you know, what he was doing, I was listening to some of his Radio Caroline material and all those, you know, weird jingles and
talking
fake
to
things.
tapes and
yes.
things.
The everybody, genius.
Somebody brilliant's done it before. Everett's idol was a man called Jack Jackson, who'd been a band leader and a trumpeter and whatever, and he did a radio series. And Ev used to listen to him when Ev was a boy. And Jack Jackson would talk to tapes. He would talk to Steptoe and Son and Tony Hancock on his show, and Ev never forgot. And Ev always acknowledged that. He said, "Oh, no, Jack Jackson, wonderful."
Did you have a favourite of any of the characters?
Well, Cupid, obviously.
Anyway, it's all done in the best possible tape.
I saw a young actress being interviewed. This is absolutely true. I saw a young actress being interviewed, and she'd been in a film with a nude axe murder scene in it. And she seriously said to the interviewer, it was all done in the best possible taste. I couldn't believe what she'd said. And I told Ray and Ev, and we just laughed and laughed, and we said, we've got to do this. And we talked and we talked. And I think it was Everett. I mean, he's just amazing. We said, we must have a character who says it's all done in the best possible taste. And then Everett also said, drag, I'll be in drag, with a beard. Then he remembered, here we go again. When he was a kid, he saw a drag act. I can still see this on the Talking Pictures channel. Old Mother Riley.
Oh,
famous, big star.
Very, very famous.
And she would cross her legs when she was talking. Cross her legs. Everett never forgot that. So it was all done in the best possible taste, crossing his legs. Anyway, we then created this character, Cupid.
Cupid stunt.
Yes. And Ev did the Parkinson show. He was coming on in drag at the beginning of the show as Cupid, going off and then coming back at the end of the show as himself. So Parky said to me, Baz, has she got a full name? I said, Cupid Stunt. He said, oh, God. He said, I'll have to practice that. Get that wrong in front of the audience. He had a good laugh about it.
Miss Cupid Stunt.
Subtle stuff, Cupid Stunt.
Do you know, I was so thrilled when I heard you wanted to have me tonight.
And we had a lady from the BBC, played by Sheila Steeple, who was called Mary Hinge.
Oh, I gather that was considered a bit too risque?
That was disgusting, Mary Hinge. We got away with it, though. Because the suits in an office are that they got the jokes and didn't want to admit they got the jokes, so they didn't even get them. So we got left alone.
Yeah. What about at Thames?
Oh, just in pose.
Oh, a fulcrum. Was it just Quentin pose?
Hello. Am I wrong in thinking that Everett is angry and yet an oasis of peace in the media maelstrom?
Quentin pose, yes. Quite right. And that was Ev's favourite and mine, but people don't... Well, you did.
Well, because I've
People don't
watched
remember.
them.
What was it? And he always finished saying...
And yet...
And yet.
And then the cut.
What cobblers?
And what was really interesting was he was... Because, the thing is, they were so well written because he really got the way that he might be overanalyzed or criticised and then turned it...
He was always contradicting himself. This is enormously enthralling and interesting, and yet in a very real sense, dull and boring. He was always saying things like that. And yet, Ev loved doing him.
Yes, it was something of the kind of BBC Two culture of the time, wasn't there, which has kind of completely disappeared. Remind me, what was the reaction? Did you get feedback about what the audience thought?
Well, his viewing figures were terrific at Thames. I don't know about the BBC scene. I think it began to tail off at the BBC and we're all getting a bit disillusioned with it, thinking we've done it all now. And the BBC routines, it wasn't ever at all.
Yeah. I mean, as a child, I taped Series 2, Episode 6, because when I was watching the box set, I remember when it hit that one. And so I'd watched that one episode repeatedly over the years, because in those days, if you didn't have a VCR, you didn't necessarily get to see them again. And the quality of... I don't know, would you say Series 2 was a particular highlight? I was really struck by...
I can't remember in detail.
No.
You're probably more in command of the details than I am. But I'll tell you something. I think it was at the BBC, a pre-record. We did Everett as the Bee Gees.
Yes, you've guessed it. It's the world-famous Bee Gees, who have sold more records than any other group called the Bee Gees in the entire history of the world.
And he plays himself talking to the three Bee Gees.
But they're here tonight to answer all the in-depth questions that you at home don't give a damn about. Well, guys, you're in the middle of a world tour and have just finished sell-out concerts here in London. Why is it, do you think, that millions of people love your music?
'Cause we're living in a world of fools.
I see.
And of course he got everything together at home. It was a cassette. He'd done the Bee Gees, a little cassette. And Ev and I went in to see an old sound veteran at the BBC. Everett very modestly said, this might help as a sort of guide.
What do you say to that? I see.
And the man took the cassette and played it. And this man said, we can't do better than that. Ev was thrilled.
Amazing. There's a lovely episode when it's the birthday of one of the cameramen. Is it Ray?
But first, it's surprise time.
And Kenny takes the camera around.
He doesn't know I'm going to do this, but driving camera 4, it's birthday boy. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, our cameraman, Chiefy Poo cameraman, Raymond Gearing, of Address Camera 4, Thames TV, Teddington.
And there you are, you're on the standing next to him with a bottle of champagne.
Ray, we'd like to present you with a bottle of cheap Japanese champagne.
Were you always on set when you were recording?
Oh, yes.
Intrigued.
Oh, yeah, you could hear Ray Cameron laughing.
Did you feel the force, Ray?
And me, I hope.
Oh, yeah, you were a very fetching
it was
suit.
very loose atmosphere. It was lovely.
And how much was Kenny Everett changing material, or was it? Did you write it quite sparely, and then he just delivered it in his own way?
You didn't. If you gave him something like Quentin Pose, he knew immediately that was an autocue.
Yeah.
But you could give him an idea or a few lines, and he'd run with it. It was the only show I ever worked on where the original script had blank pages. We'd travel in together in a car, talking and laughing and saying, here's something we could do. And we'd arrive and tell the crew, look, this is what we're going to do. And one of the cameramen once went and nicked a bike from the car park. We needed a bike for a joke. Well, the cameraman nicked a bike for us and then returned it carefully afterwards. I mean, what other show would that happen on? They loved Everett. Well, there was such a breath of fresh air to them.
What are you doing in those trousers? And stop it, whatever it is. Look at you, lily-livered mincer. Kuno, I was in the war, but I didn't see you there.
What people often forget, I have children, I'm going to show them these episodes, is at the time what attitudes to homosexuality were like. And watching things like there's the David Bowie sketch where he comes on as angry of Mayfair.
Yes.
And goes on about him being filthy
and
then wanted to be
round,
beaten. Yes.
The knickers and
But just sort of making this thing about, I would hit you.
But I think you'd enjoy it. And why should you have all the fun?
And just really pushing
yes.
The hypocrisy. At the time, did it feel that there was anything dangerous or potentially dangerous in the way that Kenny talked about that sort of stuff?
No, because he was him and we were enjoying everything so much. I don't think we stood back and thought, oh, this is a bit risky. I think that's one of the reasons he's not repeated. The stuff is incorrect now.
What's incorrect?
The attitudes. Making friendly fun of homosexuality. And, of course, Everett's own gayness,
Yeah. There's also the Bernard Manning spoof.
Oh, yes.
Who's again, it just seemed to me this was 1978, 79, and you're parodying that kind of racist, sexist comedian.
Yes. Bernard Manning himself did the show.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, Bernard Manning. Thank you, Kenny. What a lovely boy. I've never known a man so unaffected by constant failure.
Did he get the joke? Was he just...
Oh, yes, to his credit. And he was clean, the stuff he did.
Big gang of fellas running down the road. The fella said, "What's up?" He says, "A lion escaped. And which way did it go?" He said, "You don't think we're chasing it, do you?"
But while he was talking, there were gunshots and people threw knives landing in the set behind him. And he was on a truck. And he was towed out the studio, still talking.
I've had many happy days in this business, but this won't go in the scrapbook, I'll tell you that. All the best, Kenny. I've never worked with trainee clocks before.
Oh, and you can't print this.
Okay.
Or you can bleep it, asterisk.
Yeah.
We had a very jolly lunch with Bernard Manning, because Everett thought, I'm not going to like this man, but we just laughed and laughed a lot. And Manning was fine. But Bernard Manning had a minder, and he was doing a lot of work in those days, and he had another gig coming up. So his minder said, "Come on, Bernard, we've got to go." "Oh, all right." Oh, and Neil Shand was working on the show by then. "Nice to see you, Barry. Nice to see you, Neil." And he walked the door, and the restaurant, commissary, whatever, at Thames was packed. And Manning turned as he was going out and said, "Everett, always thought you were a You're all right." That was his exit line.
That's a great exit line.
As you know, upcoming is the British Eurovision Violence Contest.
The other thing was going back to the really big rock star names who came on that show.
Yeah.
It's kind of breathtaking to see him. Him and Freddie Mercury have that whole tussle.
Eurovision Violence competition.
Yeah, the Eurovision Violence competition.
I know.
And even the David Bowie one where he's chasing him around.
He's fencing on a rooftop.
Yeah. What was it? They all got him.
Wanted to know. They all wanted to know and have some fun with Everett. It was a joy. Brian Ferry.
Yeah, tell me about Brian Ferry.
We hadn't prepared anything, really. We wanted a little bit of chat with Brian Ferry.
By special arrangement, Brian Ferry. Great record, Brian.
And Everett just left it to us. Oh, they'll come up with something.
The tune is fantastic.
And I said to Brian, "You do good languid, Brian. Sit there with a cigarette and ignore him."
I suppose you started way back a long time ago. Doing a tour, I suppose, to promote the record. Everyone does tours.
So Everett keeps asking him questions. And Brian Ferry looks off, bored, stiff, and smoking a cigarette.
Well, we've been talking to Brian Ferry, ladies and gentlemen. Unfortunately, he hasn't been talking to us.
And that's all it was. Brian Ferry ignoring him. Oh, and Elton John did the show.
Oh, yeah.
And Elton is Reg Dwight from Pinner.
That's right. Not far.
And he walked in, he came over to me and said, "Hello, Baz, how's Hatch End?" Oh, and we did a piss take of Elton John and then cut in Elton saying,
"Dreadful."
So that was what I was going to ask. Sometimes, because you see the same acts crop up in different episodes quite far apart, but you also see tiny moments like that in an episode which they're not otherwise in. So did you do a lot of recording with stars when you got them?
Yes, we said, never knowing when we'd use it or anything, we just said to Elton one day, we said, "Could you just look into the camera and say, 'dreadful'?" I said, we'll find a slot for it.
Clearly he had the trust and the admiration of all these rock stars.
Yes.
And, you know, things like this It's Not pop song where it's Chrissie Hynde and the Pretenders behind. Did anyone take convincing? Did anyone say no, or did they come on because they wanted to do that?
To the best of my recollection, nobody said no. It was like a little accolade, like Eric and Ernie having you on their show. They didn't mind.
And the sets, I was struck by the budgets of that show. There were a lot of really serious sets.
Yes. Well, that was one of the problems in the finish. David Mallet was busting the budget, I think. At Thames, this was.
Yeah.
And it became a bit of an issue, and we thought, oh, God, we're going to lose David Mallet, which we did subsequently. He was also really going into the video business, recording bands and songs.
Yeah, yes, they are really well shot.
So Ev and I were desolate because he said, I'm awfully sorry, I'm leaving. He'd had a bit of a run-in with Thames about the money and blah-de-blah-de-blah. And a good man called Roy Mayo, came in to take over, who did a very good job.
Yeah.
But the joke at Thames was, Philip Jones was in his office upstairs. They used to say, if Philip ever finds out what you're doing downstairs, the jokes and everything. And Roy Mayo started, apparently, leaking up to Philip what we were up to.
Why?
I don't know. It, probably just in conversation, just slipped out or something.
Yeah.
And we're going to do a pilot of The Snots, a soap family, which was full of verbal rudery and everything.
Yeah.
Ev and I arrived, and the studio was deserted, no set or anything. And we asked somebody, what's happening? Oh, Philip's sort of banned this sketch. They're not doing it. Oh, Everett, the eyes went. Let's go and see Philip. So we went upstairs to see Philip Jones. Dear Roy Mayo sitting in the corner of his office like that. And Ev didn't even look at Roy. He looked at Philip Jones and pointed at Roy and said, oh, Philip, I can't work with this man. Real atmosphere. Philip Jones, now then, boys, ha, 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 ha. We'll have some lunch. Oh, dear, no, we're going for lunch, aren't we? And we walked out.
That's
and
what
we
happened.
did, yes. And then Jim Moyer, who's to this day still a neighbour and a friend down the road at the BBC, he heard about this. What's going on at Thames about? And he invited us for a drink at the BBC, and that's how it all happened.
I wear my solar shoes and move like Mercury. My eyes show me only what I love to see.
So when that ended, why did it end?
I think the figures were failing and we were running out of ideas, I think. We thought we've had a great time. It's not what it was. We've had a great time and let's leave it. But I think the BBC agreed. I think we got the word that, that's it after this series.
Kenny Everett's one of those people, I guess, I grew up watching him and I always thought he was a genius. And part of the frustration is because he died so young. I've always wondered what he was like. Was what you saw on camera kind of what he was, or was there another side to him?
It's very quiet. He came to Hatch End once for me. They're doing a charity walk, run, whatever. There were people in wheelchairs and people running and people with sticks. And I asked Ev to come and welcome them all when they finished. So he came to the pub. And very quiet. And he no ego or anything, but we hid him round the corner because people go, oh, Kenny Everett. And very quietly he sat like that. And then we got the news they were arriving outside. And he walked out of the pub. Hello! And he became Kenny Everett.
Switched it on.
Oh, he was pretty quiet when you were with him. He saved it for when he was on.
I know that you've spoken on TV shows before about, his appearance at the Young Conservative conference.
Let's bomb Russia!
Did you look back on that as a mistake? Because I watch it and I just think it's hilarious now. But
well, the audience there thought it was, the Tories. He never admitted to me, no, I'll tell you, let's bomb Russia, let's kick Michael Foot's stick away.
Yeah.
The press knew what he was doing, but they were awful. I think it was the Daily Mirror printed his face, half and half, Jekyll and Hyde, the idiot face of conservatism. They knew he was taking piss.
Yeah.
I said to Ev, oh boy, you've done it now. It was all over the press. Oh, it's tomorrow's fish and chips. I said, no. And I was often with him when he was interviewed, and every interviewer brought that up. And Ev would look across at me and go, here we go again. And I said to him, you should turn up everywhere now. Labour Party conference, Tories, well, it wasn't UKIP in those days, SDP, I said, Liberals. You should turn up everywhere to confuse people and enjoy yourself. Yes! And he never did. The other thing, Paul Gambaccini, who's had a rough time, said to me if Ev had lived another year, he'd still be with us.
Because of the drugs?
HIV was the killer. AIDS.
Yeah.
And yet the medical side improved dramatically. And Paul said that Ev would have survived, Ev would have lived. Oh, it's awful.
How long did you keep in touch with him after?
I always kept in touch with him. In the technological age, we were telephone animals. He used to ring me for jokes. Give me a joke, bar. I was always bar. Oh, and I'd been married about 30 years there with 4 children. And Ev said to me one day, he said, oh, you married over 30 years with 4 children. What a smoke screen.
Because he did get married briefly, didn't he?
To Lee, and I'm still in touch with Lee. She'd been married to Billy Fury. It was a very loving marriage. I mean, they knew what the score was, and we knew. It was like he married his mum or his sister.
Yeah.
And then a very friendly divorce. And she was going to marry John, who she's still married to. And they asked Ev to be the best man. And he stood up at the reception and looked at John and said, for God's sake, don't tell her about us. It was so friendly, though. It was lovely.
I mean, you've written for so many different people. Where does Kenny rate?
Oh, right up there. But as I always say, he wasn't a comedian. He was Kenny Everett. But I was so lucky, having worked with Eric and Ernie and Tommy Cooper and Les Dorr, you know, all the biggies.
Yeah.
I finished that. And he's up there with them. And people like Eric Morecambe would speak admiringly about Kenny Everett.
Oh, really?
They could see how good he was. He wasn't what they did, but they knew how good he was.
Yes! It was me all the
Well, that was my 2019 interview with Barry Cryer, and I've got to say, I have such fond memories of that afternoon, inviting me into his house. His wife was there. We sat in the kitchen, and just how much laughter and fun we had. Very thoughtful, and his memory recall was excellent. And of course, there's a particular sadness listening back to it because, of course, we've lost him. But Graham, it's the first time you've actually heard that interview that you commissioned me to do.
Yeah.
I thought it was really interesting and quite poignant, actually, when you think how young Kenny Everett was when he died and how much he'd achieved in that time.
You know, you get that sense with Kenny Everett that he had boundless creativity. So probably there would have been a third act, wouldn't there? He would have come back with something. It's always a cliche to say it, but the internet would have been great for him, wouldn't it? Can you imagine him messing about with that?
But I was really interested in hearing the differences that Barry explained about working for the BBC as opposed to Thames, and the ad-libbing, which said, "Oh, can you do that again?" There was a shadow on his face.
Yeah,
there's completely missing the point of the spontaneity.
No, and it seems like the things that sometimes people wag a finger at ITV4, which is a word that Barry actually uses, tattiness, was a virtue for Kenny, wasn't it? And this kind of lawlessness and not being proper. And there are times where people want to tune to the BBC because they want things to be proper and definitive. But actually, when you're making comedy like Kenny Everett, you don't want either of those things, do you?
No. I loved the revelation about, the blank pages in the script, that, you were working with someone who would just create stuff up on the spot, and you knew it would happen, and all you had to do was point a camera at it and have a crew who were ready to go with the flow. I find that thrilling.
Yeah, it's great. And it's it gives it a real energy when you watch those things now that still really works. And you get the feeling it was a collegiate kind of energy, because if you think of something like TFI Friday, which also has the sort of the crew roaring with laughter, that feels very much like there's a hierarchy there with Chris Evans at the top and everyone else is subordinate. And it never really feels like that. I mean, maybe I'm being naive, but it never really feels like that on Kenny Everett, does it? It just feels like lots of people messing about.
Yes, and it's more intimate. I mean, you really feel like it's him and a crew in a studio. It makes a virtue of the fact that it doesn't have a big studio audience. It's not playing to a crowd. There is no hierarchy.
Yeah.
The other show I was thinking of, which I guess is in a way sort of owes a lot to it, is something like the original Graham Norton show on Channel 4, which when it started in the, I think, early 90s, seemed really exciting to me and quite groundbreaking. He was showing, clips from the internet to guests, which seemed quite shocking at the time, playing with them and their expectations. Obviously, when he moved to the BBC, that inevitably got toned down. And although it's always been very successful, I remember thinking something of the anarchy of the early Graham Norton was lost in that transition. There's something about the first iteration of it in independent television, which I think early Channel 4 and even early 90s Channel 4 could, like Thames, do some really bold stuff. Again, it's easy to be nostalgic about this, but that sense of him genuinely being fearless, unafraid of offending. And that's why that comment he made at the Young Conservatives conference, which he didn't realise wasn't going to blow over in the same way, as Barry Cryer pointed out. You have a sense of him living on the edge and not quite realising what he might have done. That's so thrilling, because people now, while we think, oh, you can do anything and there's so much more obscenity and extreme content on the internet and people say outrageous things, celebrities are much more savvy about where they want to draw the line. They don't want to risk genuinely being cancelled. And Kenny Everett was genuinely fearless in a way that I think has gone, and I miss that.
Yes, I think that's true. I think in the way that people now rue their own spontaneity, don't they? And it can be held to account for it. But, one gets a sense with Kenny Everett, yes, that his Let's Bomb Russia thing. Do you know, I'm not sure he ever regretted saying that, though.
I know. Well, it was so ludicrous.
I think he thinks the joke worked in the way he wanted it to work.
It clearly did. I mean, that's exactly what Barry Cryer was saying. It's clear he didn't think anyone would take it seriously. Of course it wasn't meant seriously. And everyone in the audience knew it was a joke.
The nearest thing I can think of to Kenny Everett, in a way, is Chris Morris, isn't it? It has that same kind of messing about. Although I think Chris Morris's stuff has more of a remit, which Kenny doesn't feel like he ever had a remit or a line of inquiry or an argument, and Chris Morris's always does, and that he's trying to subvert and he's trying to satirise and he's trying to expose pomposity. And I don't think Kenny Everett ever really had that kind of mission. But there is a similarity, isn't there? Yeah,
well, I think the thing about Kenny Everett, which is perhaps the less valued part now, but it should be the most valued part, is his genuine technical expertise, the things he made with tape. So Barry Cryer gave a great example of the Bee Gees skit, and that sense of pushing at the boundaries of technology. I think there isn't really anyone who's done that since. They might be writing intelligent scripts or coming up with creative ideas, but to actually technically be doing it themselves, that I think is significant. What I was going to say is when I interviewed Tony Blackburn a few years ago to mark the 50th anniversary of Radio 1, he talked about him and Kenny Everett, and I suspect Kenny Everett did a lot of this, going into radio to the BBC and explaining to them how they didn't want a room with men in white coats pressing play on tapes. They were going to run the desk themselves and what they needed. There's DJs who'd come from pirate radio. They were going to run their own music. And they brought this, people like Kenny Everett brought modern DJ technology and DJing to the BBC. So, we owe him a huge debt. I remember training as a news trainee at Grafton House, I think it was, and they had a little setup with a record player, and they showed you how you could line up records so you could cue them up and talk over before the lyrics started and all those things. These are all skills that I guess in my own way I've been trained because of Kenny Everett's role in helping the BBC develop new technology to make Radio 1 happen.
Well, our next regular episode of Through the Square Window is also a deep dive interview with a giant of TV comedy. Recorded in January 2026, Samira and I visited the home of writer, actor, comedian, illustrator and all-round goodie, Graham Garden. Until then, goodbye.
Thanks for listening to Through the Square Window.
This was a Square Window production with music by local teenagers.
Our podcast logo was designed by Stuart Manning.
Do subscribe and tell other people about us, and if you're inclined, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts.